Hi again, grade 5 students. So we're finished with our lesson about the human body. I hope you guys learned a lot of fascinating facts about your body. And we are going to start a new chapter, and it's the kingdoms of living things, or how are living things grouped. You guys did a research and you discovered the 6 types of kingdoms of living things. So we're going to learn lots of new and interesting facts about them. Okay, so when science first started, there were only 2 kingdoms. There were only the plant kingdom and, of course, the animal kingdom. As you know, plants are multicelled. It means they're made up of millions and millions of cells, and we can see plants with our eyes. We don't need a microscope. There's about 390,000 different types of plants that exist on planet Earth. And we already studied lots of things about plants since grade 1. We studied about vascular and the second kingdom that people knew existed was the animal kingdom. Of course, most animals are also multicelled, and we're going to take a look at one way to group animals, and it's going to be we're going to group them into vertebrates and invertebrates. You guys already know the word vertebra. So vertebrates comes from the word vertebra. Vertebrates are animals that have a backbone, okay, because vertebra is the name of the bones of the backbone. And invertebrates are animals that do not have a backbone, like a jellyfish. So as I said at the beginning of science, scientists only thought that there were 2 kingdoms, plants and animals. And we'll see why later on. And they used to group the mushrooms with the plant kingdom, because mushrooms grow in the soil. So everyone just thought that they were plants. But then there was a big argument amongst the scientists that some of them objected, and they said that mushrooms are not plants for many reasons, of course. And so they started to argue that even though they grow in the soil, they're not plants. So if we want to compare between plants and mushrooms, as you guys already know, plants have chlorophyll. They have the green material inside of their chloroplasts to help them trap sunlight. So they do photosynthesis and they're producers. That means they make their own food. They make their own sugar inside of their cells. Now, mushrooms, on the other hand, of course, they're obviously not green, so they don't have chlorophyll. That means they can't do photosynthesis, because without chlorophyll, it's impossible to do photosynthesis. And if they don't make their own food, they're not producers. We can't. So the solution was to make a third kingdom, which is the fungi kingdom. So, as you know, plants, yeast, and mold, we're going to talk about them later on, they belong to the fungi kingdom. Now, most of the fungi are multicelled. It means they're not made up of a single cell. They're more than one cell. Most of them. Whenever we say most are multicelled, that means we can just say they're multicelled. But keep in mind that we're going to see later on that there's one kind of fungi that's single-celled. But however, most of the fungi are multicelled, so we can. So, as you guys might already know, the fungi kingdom, they are decomposers. That means they take nutrients by breaking down dead organisms or the wastes of organisms. That's how they get their nutrients. They're decomposers. Okay, we already talked about that in grade 3. And there's 3 main examples of fungi. The mushrooms, all types of mushrooms. The yeast, we did an experiment once with yeast. Yeast are the single-celled fungi. Okay, that's why we say fungi are. So up till now, we had 3 kingdoms, the plants, the animals, and the fungi. Now, with the invention of microscopes, scientists were able to see organisms that they never saw before. That's because they're microscopic organisms. It means they can't be seen with the eye, and a microscope is needed to see them. So these are the multicelled organisms. They're made up of one single cell. That's why they're hard to see without a microscope, and so they're extremely tiny. Now, there's 3 unicelled kingdoms. So these are some microscopic pictures of unicelled bacteria. Also, we have the protists. They are also mostly unicelled. We'll be talking about each kingdom on its own later on, but for now we're just getting introduced to the 6 kingdoms and whether they are multicelled or unicelled, okay? So you do know a lot of examples of plants and animals and fungi, but you probably don't know some names of bacteria or protists or archaea yet. So the archaea in your research, they're really called archaebacteria. Okay, they're very similar to bacteria, but there's a slight difference between them. So that's why they also have their own kingdom. They are also unicelled organisms. So up till now on planet Earth, there's 6 known kingdoms of life. These are their Latin names: the Animalia, meaning the animal kingdom; the Plantae, meaning the plant kingdom; the Fungi; the Protesta or the protists; the Eubacteria or the bacteria; the Archaebacteria or the Archaea, as we have them in our book. Okay, now this chapter is on page 180 in your book. So if you want to start reading about them, you can. It would be very good for you to start reading about them. Of course, we are multicelled organisms. Remember, multicelled organisms are living things that are made up of more than one cell, okay? They are made up of more than one cell. Of course, you are a multicelled organisms. Of course, you can think of many other multicelled organisms, any animal, any plant, and some of the fungi like mushrooms and mold are multicelled organisms. So again, unicellular or unicelled organisms are made up of one single cell, like bacteria and archaea and protists and the yeast in the fungi kingdom. The amoeba that you see here under unicellular is a type of protist that we're going to talk about later on. Now, plants and animals and mushroom and mold in the fungi kingdom are multicellular or multicelled. So to summarize, you should know that unicelled organisms, they're microscopic, they're made up of one cell only, like the bacteria, archaea, most of the protists, and yeast. And the multicelled organisms are not microscopic, they're made up of more than one cell, like all plants and animals, and the mushrooms and mold in the fungi kingdom. Okay? This is just the beginning, okay? We're going to talk about each kingdom in details I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson about the 6 kingdoms of living organisms.